Today is the last and 7th day of this November 83 7-day retreat. And our readings today will be from the writings of Huang on the transmission of the mind, translated by John Blofeld. If you're new to a 7-day retreat, you may have never heard these readings before, or you may have heard them innumerable times. We usually read them on the 7th day. Is one hearing the same stuff all over? Or is it possible for the hearing, the listening, to be new? Which means uncluttered by memory of what one has heard before, which is the danger of hearing the same words over and over again. One is, as it were, humming along. And when one is humming along, one is not listening, one is humming. One is listening to one's humming. But if there is a new listening, there can be also a new perception, even though one has heard the same word 1,000 times. And that's the only thing that matters, not to ingrain words into one's mind. One has enough of those. But to see something that is new and direct, immediate, and without any interference of thought. We'll start with this dialogue between Huang and his disciple, the scholar-disciple who was a Buddhist scholar of scriptures. When one reads through the book, he asks so many questions about this and that scripture and this passage from that one. Very knowledgeable, yet an ardent follower of Huang Po, never tiring of asking him questions, and Huang Po never tiring of giving him answers. And it is supposedly this man who wrote down these dialogues. Here he asks, what is the way, and how must it be followed? We ask this question, maybe in different ways. How must I go about this? How must I do this thing? Or, what is this way? What am I here for? What is this way, and how must it be followed? Way here is capitalized. Huang Po says, what sort of thing do you suppose the way to be that you should wish to follow it? A thing is always something made by the mind and conditioning the mind, thinking of something that one wants to follow, conditions the mind, holds it captive in that thing, in that thinking about the thing. What sort of thing do you suppose the way to be, that you should wish to follow it? And the questioner says, what instructions have the masters everywhere given for meditation practice and the study of the Dharma, or the study of the truth? Can you give me some of these ancient instructions that you must certainly have inherited from your teacher, and he from his, and he from his, on back to the Buddha himself. And the Buddha studied with other Buddhas, and those studied with previous Buddhas. So what are the instructions that masters everywhere have given for dhyana, for meditation practice, and the study of truth? And Huang Po says, words used to attract the dull of wit are not to be relied on. Summarily proclaiming here that written instructions are for the dull of wit. Don't rely on them. Dull meaning just reading without seeing what it means, and relying on one's knowledge of sacred writings, whatever the tradition may be. Questioner says, if those teachings were meant for the dull-witted, I have yet to hear what truth has been taught to those of really high capacity. And Huang Po says, if they're really people of high capacity, where would they find people to follow? Following meaning learning the ways of the teacher, and a lot of imitation that's involved, repeating. Becoming conditioned in the ways of the teacher. Huang Po continues, if they seek from within themselves, they will find nothing tangible. Not if one seeks from within oneself, one will find nothing tangible. One may find lots of garbage, as the way people put it, but if it's really attended to, it disappears, only to give way maybe to new garbage. But if there's attending to it, not allowing it to disturb, then there may be a state in which there is nothing. Garbage or no garbage. Nothing tangible. Nothing proclaimable. Nothing. No thing. Nothing manufactured by the mind, by the thinking, remembering, knowledgeable mind. If one seeks from within oneself, one will find nothing tangible. How much less can they find a truth worthy of their attention elsewhere? This is the feeling one gets. If I find nothing tangible in here, I'll go someplace else. Maybe there I'll find something. If there's nothing tangible inside, will that change with the place where one works? Will the looking within change? Or will one attach to a new set of words or instructions? One can only answer this oneself. No one can do it for one, if one is observant and really serious about this matter of understanding oneself thoroughly. Huang Po continues, do not look to what is called the Dharma, or the truth, by preachers, for what sort of Dharma could that be? Dharma, we've mentioned once, is a Sanskrit word which has many different connotations, reference. One of them is truth, truth of the universe, also referring in a more limited way to the teaching of the Buddha or to things themselves. But here it means a teaching about the truth. Do not look to what is called the truth or the teaching of the truth by preachers, for what sort of truth could that be? The questioner says, if that is so, should we not seek for anything at all? And Huang Po says, by conceding this, you would save yourself a lot of mental effort. Questioner, but in this way everything would be eliminated. There cannot just be nothing. Do you feel the state of mind that is emerging? Huang Po says, who called it nothing? Who was this fellow? But you wanted to seek for something. And the questioner says, since there's no need to seek, why do you also say that not everything is eliminated? Let me say this again. Since there's no need to seek, why do you also say that not everything is eliminated? Equating not seeking with there being nothing. Nothing meaning sort of a feeling of total annihilation of everything. Self and other, the universe, all annihilated, nothing. If there's nothing to seek, then there's nothing. And Huang Po responds, not to seek is to rest tranquil. One always thinks seeking is the activity and not seeking is nothing or is passivity. Some people have mentioned this recently to me. You always talk about passivity, never even use the word. But this immediate, juxtaposition of opposites. Here he says, not to seek for anything is to rest tranquil, which does not mean going to sleep. It means simply not seeking, with all that is involved in seeking, mentally as well as physically. A goal in mind, ambition, pressure, a motive that pushes and a goal that pulls, fear of not attaining, competition with others who seem to be. What does it mean to rest tranquil? What is this kind of resting in tranquility, which is not sleeping? Which is not reaching, not running, not escaping, not expecting. Just being there as one is, not labeling how one is, how one should be, not knowing. Huang Po says, not to seek is to rest tranquil. Who told you to eliminate anything? Look at the void in front of your eyes. How can you produce it or eliminate it? Void here meaning the wholeness of everything. not separated into this and this and this and this with names and reactions to it. This I like, that I hate. The totality of life, of being, inside and out, with no one there who has preference, reacting. I like this but not that. This I'll take, that I'll throw out. Look at the void in front of your eyes. How can you produce it or eliminate it? Now the questioner says, if I could reach this truth, this Dharma, would it be like the void? What he hears is words. And then I want to reach what you mean by that. And then is that what you mean? The void? The state of tranquility? And Huang Po says, morning and night I have explained to you that the void is both one and the manifold. I said this as a temporary expedient, but you are building up concepts from it. And the questioner says, do you mean that we should not form concepts as human beings normally do? And Huang Po says, I have not prevented you. See the concept arising. That's all that's necessary. But we cling to it immediately and defend it. It's our own. It's something tangible. And shades out, obstructs what is real, what is not conceptual. I have not prevented you, says Huang Po, but concepts are related to the senses. When reaction takes place, wisdom is shut out. Related to the senses, it means one sees something and immediately makes a concept out of it, an image, and then a reaction to it, which one can observe. This is a very, very fundamental process going on, which is observable by anyone. Hearing something, naming it, and then I like it or I don't like it. It's a distraction or it's a wonderful thing. If it's a distraction, wanting to be rid of it, getting annoyed about it, maybe somebody breathing heavily to one, or whatever may be, rustling noises, or somebody sitting so solid, and one likes that, and then one hopes when next session will sit next to this person again. So is it possible for a sensation to take place and not react to it? Maybe a name comes up. The name is not the lethal thing. It can be put aside quickly. The reaction cannot be put aside so quickly. But the reaction is usually to the name, to the label. It already exists in the synapses in the brain. And it takes attention for that not to automatically take place. When reaction takes place, wisdom is shut out. Questioner says, then should we avoid any feeling in relation to the Dharma? always jumping to a conclusion about what Huang Po has said. Huang Po is talking very openly. Should we avoid any feeling? It's again not watching the feeling that comes up and seeing that, but the idea, now I discovered something new that's wrong, should I avoid it? And Huang Po says, where no feeling arises, who can say that you're right? Now he's speaking for himself. Whatever the person says, all right, you're saying it. Can you hear it yourself? You want me always to say, this is right, this is wrong. But it's just what you're saying. Can you hear it yourself? Without my approval or disapproval? Just hear it as it comes out. Because we wait for approval or disapproval, we don't hear what we say and examine it ourselves. Disapproval or approval from authority makes it unnecessary for us to look for ourselves, and we like avoiding the effort of looking for ourselves and rather get an authority figure or someone whom we imbue with authority to settle matters for us and tell us what is right and wrong, what to do and what not to do. This is how we become followers and create leaders. Authoritarian leaders. We create them just as much as they create followers. Can we see that? It's so important in this day and age where everything seems to move in the direction of leading and following. Dictatorship, not just political, religious as well, etc. Now, Huang Po just says, where no feeling arises, who can say that you're right? And the questioner says, why do you speak as though I was mistaken in all the questions I've asked your reverence? And Huang Po says, you're a man who doesn't understand what is said to him. What is all this about being mistaken? Questioner goes on and says, up to now you have refuted everything which has been said. You have done nothing to point out the true Dharma, the truth to us. And it may just be by this, refuting that, this, it's not that, and not that either, not this either. And then when there's nothing left, maybe truth will dawn on its own, because it cannot be pointed out. Huang Po says, in the true Dharma, in the truth there is no confusion, but you produce confusion by such questions. What sort of truth can you go seeking for? And the questioner says, since the confusion arises from my questions, what will your reverence's answer be? And Huang Po says, observe things as they are and don't pay attention to other people. There are some people just like mad dogs, barking at everything that moves, even barking when the wind stirs among the grass and leaves. Then he goes on with a little talk. Regarding this Zen doctrine of ours, since it was first transmitted, it has never taught that men should seek for learning or form concepts. In quotation marks, studying the way is just a figure of speech. It is a method of arousing people's interest. In fact, the way is not something which can be studied. Study leads to the retention of concepts, and so the way is entirely misunderstood. Moreover, the way is not something especially existing. Truly, it is not located anywhere. The first step is to refrain from knowledge-based concepts. This implies that if you were to follow the empirical method to the utmost limit, on reaching that limit you would still be unable to locate mind. The way is spiritual truth and was originally without name or title. It was only because people ignorantly sought for it empirically that the Buddhas appeared and taught them to eradicate this method of approach. That's an interesting way of putting it. It was only because people ignorantly sought for a way that the Buddhas appeared and taught them to eradicate this method of approach. Fearing that no one would understand, they selected the name way, or Dharma, or Tao. You must not allow this name to lead you into forming a mental concept of a road. And there's a lot to this mental concept of a road, because it leads from here, where I am, to some place out there in the distant future. Because I've also been taught that this takes lifetimes and lifetimes, and then some more lifetimes. But when there's no road, no way, then what all about this time and distance? Concepts. But we can't drop them. Or can we? Maybe in questioning this whole thing, they drop on their own. Because then there's no dropper. He goes on here later, if you now set about using your minds to seek mind, listening to the teaching of others, and hoping to reach the goal through mere learning, when will you ever succeed? These days people only seek to stuff themselves with knowledge and deductions, seeking everywhere for book knowledge and calling this Dharma practice. They do not know that so much knowledge and deduction have just the contrary effect of piling up obstacles. Merely acquiring a lot of knowledge makes you like a child who gives himself indigestion by gobbling too much curds. Those who study the way according to the three vehicles, these are all the Buddhist scriptures, are all like this. All you can call them is people who suffer from indigestion. When so-called knowledge and deductions are not digested, they become poisons. for they belong only to the plane of samsara, meaning this daily life of becoming and unbecoming and wanting wanting more and getting more and wanting more and indigestion. It goes on, all the concepts, incidentally I do leave out passages or words here and there. All the concepts you have formed in the past must be discarded and replaced by void. Means replaced by nothing, not by new one. Discarding, the first step is to question them. And that's not easy because we don't even realize how much for granted we take so many concepts, not just that have come through us through Buddhist training. Where dualism ceases, dualism means opposition, opposites, me and you, enlightened and unenlightened. Where dualism exists, or where dualism ceases, there is the void of the womb of Tathagatas. Tathagatas is Buddha. The Sanskrit word means thus come. Or thus being thus, coming thus, this way and no other way. And that is what happens when dualism ceases, and everything is just thus, this way, no other way. But it's not fixed until we make a concept out of it. Then we fixed it in the concept, not in reality. We're still busy with a concept, and reality has long changed. Still dream about the summer and it's snowing. Goes on at a different place. Above all, it is essential not to select some particular teaching suited to a certain occasion, and being impressed by its forming part of the written canon, regarded as an immutable concept. Why so? Because, in truth, there is no unalterable teaching which the Buddha could have proclaimed. Says here, not to select some particular teaching suited to a certain occasion, and being impressed by its forming part of the written canon of some tradition, doesn't have to be the Buddhist tradition, regarded as immutable truth. Why so? Because in truth there is no unalterable truth, a teaching. People of our sect would never argue that there could be such a thing, an unalterable true teaching, meaning a method or the words being taken for the real thing. We just know how to put all mental activities to rest and thus achieve tranquility. We certainly do not begin by thinking things out and ending up in perplexity. So the questioner continues, from all you've just said, mind is the Buddha. But it's not clear as to what sort of mind is meant by this mind, which is the Buddha. And Huang Po says, how many minds have you got? Questioner says, but is the Buddha the ordinary mind or the enlightened mind? And Huang Po says, where on earth do you keep your ordinary mind and your enlightened mind? And then the questioner says, in the teaching of the three vehicles, it is stated that there are both. Why does your reverence deny it? He has a hard time with his reverence. But his reverence is very patient. He's not the kind who says 60 blows, or one blow, or cuts. He just talks. He says in the teaching, Huang Po says, in the teaching of the three vehicles, it is clearly explained that the ordinary and enlightened minds are illusions. You don't understand. All this clinging to the idea of things existing is to mistake vacuity for the truth. How can such conceptions not be illusory? Being illusory, they hide mind from you. If you would only rid yourselves of the concepts of ordinary and enlightened, you would find that there is no other Buddha than the Buddha in your own mind. You people go on misunderstanding. You hold on to concepts such as ordinary and enlightened, directing your thoughts outwards where they gallop about like horses. All this amounts to beclouding your own minds. So I tell you, mind is the Buddha. As soon as thought or sensation arises, you fall into dualism. Only if it's reacted to, controlled, run away from, or some such thing. Otherwise it can arise and leave as lightly as the wisp of a cloud. Then he goes on and says, beginningless time and the present moment are the same. Beginningless time and the present moment are the same. There is no this and no that. To understand this truth is called enlightenment. And the questioner says, upon what doctrine does your reverence base these words? And Huang Po says, why seek a doctrine? As soon as you have a doctrine, you fall into dualistic thought. One of them being, my doctrine is superior to yours. Because there's not only one doctrine. Every religion has them. And the very process of doctrinating, thinking in terms of doctrine, is a thought process, which is a divisive process. We talked about it once, and many people mentioned in meetings that they saw that. The narrow tunnel of thinking. The narrow channel, the narrow dark channel of thinking, which closes up immediately if there was some more space. A self-centered thinking is meant. Not thinking, right now, gotta get up and fix the carrots or chop something in the kitchen. Even that narrows down, one has to attend to that. But if it is not, I must be the best cook here, then the space is, the breadth and width and openness is easily accessible. It's there, even though one narrows down the attention temporarily to do something specific or think something through specifically. It is the me that arrogates the totality of space unto itself, and it shrivels and shrinks and is like a bag around one, or a shell. Questioner comes back. He had heard this thing that Huang Po had said, beginningless time and this moment are the same. It's probably caught his fancy, because it's an intriguing thought. Maybe somewhere inside even resonates with something. So he comes back, he says, just now you said that the beginningless past and the present are the same. What do you mean by that? And Huang Po says, it is just because of your seeking that you make a difference between them. Do you understand that? Seeking meaning, today I start out to seek, and in the distant future, maybe after many lifetimes, I'll get someplace. There is then, the time has been created and divided. Because one may also think, I've already done some seeking in present lives, or else I wouldn't have come to Zen. Maybe I already was a monk sometime in the past. You laugh, but people say that and believe it. And whether it is true or not, but the actions come then out of this belief and this conviction, rather than being free of belief and conviction, and free of the past. Why does one have to carry on what one has done in the past? There's no necessity in that. But it creates time, and time often justifies our action. And it divides the present from the past, from the future, which is, in truth, one whole, if thought doesn't cut it up. One whole moving process, moving, ever creating, ever renewing process. Huang Po just said it's because of your seeking that you make a difference between them, the beginningless past and this moment. Huang Po continues, if you were to stop seeking, how would there be any difference between them? The questioner, in hearing a statement like this, doesn't just stop thinking and asking and just look for a moment at what's happening inside him, but he attaches to the words and the logic of them. And so he comes back, if they're not different, why did you employ separate terms for them? Why did you yourself said beginningless, past and present moment? If they're not different, why did you talk about them? And Huang Po says, if you hadn't mentioned ordinary and enlightened, who would have bothered to say such things? Just as those categories have no real existence, so mind is not really mind. And as both mind and those categories are really illusions, wherever can you hope to find anything? The questioner says, illusion can hide from us our own mind, but up to now you have not taught us how to get rid of illusion. And Huang Po says, the arising and the elimination of illusion are both illusory. Illusion is not something rooted in reality. It exists because of your dualistic thinking. If you will only cease to indulge in opposed concepts such as ordinary and enlightened, illusion will cease of itself. It sounds very simple. Isn't that simple? But one just listens to the words openly. And then if you still want to destroy it, this illusion, wherever it may be, you will find that there is not a hair's breadth left of anything on which to lay hold. This is the meaning of I will let go with both hands, for then I shall certainly discover the Buddha or truth in my own mind, in my mind. And the questioner says, if there's nothing on which to lay hold, how is this truth to be transmitted? And Huang says, it is a transmission of mind with mind. And the questioner says, if mind is used for transmission, why do you say mind does not exist? And Huang says, obtaining nothing whatever is called mind transmission. Obtaining nothing whatever is called mind transmission. The understanding of this mind implies no mind and no teaching. The questioner says, if there's no mind and no teaching, what is meant by transmission? If something tangible that is transmitted. See, the word itself does does all this stuff. The power of the word, which hides the understanding of there being nothing. And if there are two people who see that, then what is said is something is transmitted, but nothing is transmitted. It's just not two minds anymore. My understanding versus your understanding. And he quotes Bodhidharma, who said, the nature of the mind, when understood, no human speech can compass or disclose. Enlightenment is not to be attained, and he that gains it does not say he knows. We'll just end up with this one passage here. Our original nature is, in highest truth, devoid of any atom of objectivity. Which means it's not this, it's not this, it's not that, and it's not that either. No thing. It is void, omnipresent, silent, pure. It is glorious and mysterious, peaceful joy, and that is all. Enter deeply into it by awakening to it yourself. That which is before you is it, in all its fullness, utterly complete. There's naught beside it. Even if you go through all the stages of a bodhisattva's progress toward Buddhahood, one by one, when at last in a single flash you attain realization, you will only be realizing the nature which has been with you all the time. And by all the foregoing stages you will have added to it nothing at all. You will come to look upon those eons of work and achievements as no better than unreal actions performed in a dream. That is why the Tathagata said, it's the other name for Buddha, which means thus come, thusness. This is why the Tathagata said, I truly attain nothing from complete unexcelled enlightenment. He also said this Dharma is absolutely without distinctions, neither high nor low. It is pure mind which is the source of everything, and which, whether appearing as sentient beings or as Buddhas, as rivers and mountains of the world, which has form, or as that which is formless, or as penetrating the whole universe, is absolutely without distinctions, there being no such entities as selfness and otherness. One thought of me arising and the distinctions are there. One thought of me seen through, and where are there distinctions? Which doesn't mean that the water isn't wet and the sand is dry. We will end here for today.